Lovers of knowledge, I implore you to subscribe for free on my YouTube channel at Ebenezer Heru, where more of our untold African history will be exposed. Now, let's look at the topic of the day. After the independence of African nations from the shackles of colonialism, some African leaders decided to form the United States of Africa with a single government. But the former colonial masters, for the purpose of keeping the continent divided, convinced other African leaders to settle for a mere organization in 1963. Before the formation of the organization, the newly independent African countries were grouped into three different blocks, such as the Casablanca, the Moravia, and the Brazzaville. These groups had different ideology on how independent African countries can come together in unity. Now, the Casablanca bloc was a radical group that agitated for the United States of Africa with a single language and government governing the whole of Africa. Unfortunately, this was not accepted by many African leaders who feared that they might not acquire political power after they had fought tirelessly for their African countries to gain political autonomy from colonial rule. They kicked against the idea and settled for the formation of the Organization of African Unity, which is OAU, which is today called African Union, AU. This was exactly what the former colonial masters wanted. The colonial masters lobbied the new leaders to settle for OAU and not a one government in Africa. This decision was one of the major factors that has kept Africans completely disunited, especially at the international level today. The likes of late Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana and late Gaddafi of Libya have bitterly buttressed the benefit in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, of having a united Africa under one political umbrella. But the newly independent leaders were convinced to embrace statehood and rule as presidents in their African countries. Little did they know that this is mainly for the economic interests of their former colonial masters, who still want African countries to be economically and politically colonized and divided. The fact is that if African nations are under one African government with a single and generally accepted language like Swahili, the resources of Africa will be utilized for the political and economic development of the continent. The failure to form a united Africa has led to the disunity among African leaders in the international political atmosphere. African leaders who are now presidents in their countries are used by their former colonial masters for the underdevelopment of Africa because of loans from World Bank and IMF. The main aim of the formation of the OAU was to bring African nations together and resolve the issues within the continent. But it is disheartening to inform you that this is the most useless international organization as long as the history of Africa is concerned. A failure that is characterized by irrational and greedy leaders who are controlled by their creditors in the World Bank and IMF. African leaders in the international organizations are meaningless when they speak. They only go there to take pictures with their former colonial masters. They go there to show the Americans and the English leaders that they can speak good English. Meanwhile, the Chinese, the Russians, and the Indians speak in their local dialect at international conferences. We only know how to speak good English, but cannot provide food and good governance for our teeming population in Africa. It is very deplorable that the continent that once gave the world civilization is now a barbarian. Africans, stand up. This is a clarion call.